Today I'm going to go through and shoot a short video about how our process works when you start a campaign with us, and I'm just going to go over a few frequently asked questions that other customers have asked us just to make sure that the campaign goes smoothly. So generally for all campaigns that we're running split tests on, we'll set up what's called an AA split test to begin with. And what this does is it allows us to check the funnel and check your buying process, whether that's your product page, cart checkout, or your funnel through to purchase, to make sure that our split testing software is tracking it all perfectly. This makes sure that when we start running split tests, we're not going to run into any complications or lose any time for split testing. Now, we do the AA split tests during the strategy and the mock-up stage of the split test setup. So generally, when our split tests are being set up in the first 7 to 10 days, this is automatically being done. It only takes a few minutes for our team to set up. So this will be gathering data while we're working on the next step of the split testing process, which is blocking in the strategy and starting the mock-up so you can visually see what the tests look like on your website before we start running them. So for that initial strategy that we use to start split testing on your website, most of the strategies we come up with are used from past clients winning tests. So we've worked with 750 plus websites in the last 4.5, 5 years now. So we have a lot of data on what works. So the tests we're using on your website have already been validated in the past. So we're not just coming up with a brand new test out of thin air. It has a high likelihood of winning straight out of the gate anyway. As your campaign progresses and moves on from month to month, the strategy that we outlined in the proposal when we first were in discussions will likely change. So as data comes in, as split test data is confirmed or unconfirmed, we will adjust the strategy over time based on this data. A lot of people want us to come up with a 4 to 6 month plan, but we could do it, but it's also limiting to the success we'll have, because based on how tests perform, we'll adjust the campaign. So for instance, we may see that most of our wins are happening on mobile, which, when we're putting together the strategy on the initial round of testing, we might not have that data. So it allows us to allow the campaign and the data to dictate us rather than, say, our own egos or past historical tests. Because we have so many split tests that we have to go through, we use a methodology called ICE, which is impact, confidence, and ease. So we use these 3 metrics to work out what the test is that we first start on your website. We want a test that will have the largest impact, but if that test takes a long time to set up, maybe we'll set that up second or third, and we'll start a test that has a higher impact but a low development time, so we can get it running while we're setting up the second split test. As you can see, there's a lot of things that we do in the back end, but I'm creating this short explainer video just so you understand why we do things, and it will create a much more frictionless campaign. So once those initial strategies are confirmed, we then send through visual mock-ups so you can see how the strategies will look on your website. Now, a lot of the time over text, something may seem like a good idea, but when you see it visually represented on your website, maybe you don't like it so much, or maybe it doesn't fit in with your branding, and then we can make final tweaks before we actually push it live to the development team, which set it up in the split testing software. And this is just adding in this step of having clients approve the tests in a visual sense has helped us run more successful campaigns in a shorter period, just because it catches these sort of errors along the way. And like I said, once the visual mockups are approved, then we go and set up the first split tests in the A/B split testing software, which we use, which is VWO, which we don't actually make any changes to the back end of your website. The little short code or the little snippet code we add to the header of your website will allow us to add and inject code into your website and switch around and track the elements on the page. So it's not until we have a winning test that we need to actually get access to your backend and your hosting to make those changes, or alternatively, we work with your team to push those live. But when we're running the split tests, We just need access to our split testing software to set up all the tests to run the first split test. And again, once those split tests are set up in the split testing software, we then send you a preview link of how that will look to your users. So not only do we send the visual representation in mockup form, we also send it when it's been coded before it's been sent to your users. So we have a little preview link we send from our split testing software. You can click, play around on the website, make sure that everything looks okay. We have our own quality assurance that's done on our team to make sure there's no bugs or rendering problems, but we allow you to go in and play around on the website too of how it's actually going to look. Once that's been approved, we then start the test, and that gets segmented to the different user groups we're running in the split test campaign. So generally, tests run for 2 to 4 weeks, sometimes a bit longer, but we don't like to run tests any shorter than 2 weeks, just for data, no matter the amount of traffic running through, just because of market cycles and so on. We like to have that large amount of traffic for that time. So time is also a part of the equation when it comes into split testing. So another question that comes up a lot is that the tracking of the conversions doesn't match up with the tracking of conversions on your website. So during the duration of the split test, we track conversions through our split testing software because we're segmenting traffic in a strange way that's not exactly 50-50. So depending on the type of website, sometimes we do 45% of traffic to one variation, 45% to another, and 5% as sort of error or trash traffic. So because of this, you won't correctly see the conversion rate increase until we roll out the winning test to your website. So a lot of times there's some confusion around why the numbers don't match up, but it's being tracked accurately through our split testing software. I just thought I'd make that clear, and that does come up quite often. And one thing that our team does to speed up the testing process for the overall campaign is once a test is coming up for conclusion, whether it's that 2, 3, 4 week stage, they will start to prepare the next test based on how that test is performing or likely to perform. So we don't sort of waste any time, and we'll start to send through the mock-ups and the strategy and so on before time or around the time that test finishes, just so we can have them ready for the next round. And one thing to note too is that after the first test, the split tests do happen quicker. So during the onboarding process, the 7 to 10 days before we start running the first test, we need to get access to your website. We need to add our tracking code. We need to start working with your team members and so on, if that's the case. So there can be a lot of friction at the beginning. Well, not a lot of friction, but more friction than future tests because of that initial onboarding. But once that's done, the process generally works very swiftly. So you're not going to see the 7 to 10 days turnaround time for that first test because everything's overlapping and working in sequence. And if applicable, what we do at the end of the campaign is we'll put together what's called an exit packet, which is a zip file containing all raw codes, all implementation documentation of how to implement, change different things we've added. We don't like to use plugins a lot of the time, so a lot of the codes we've added are just simple CSS and HTML, sometimes basic JavaScript. So by giving you the implementation pack, it allows you to easily be able to add it to other pages, make coding changes with your developer in the future, and just allows for no reliance on us in the future. It doesn't bond us to have to always hire us for future campaigns. We sort of wrap up the campaign and pass you over that packet to do as you will. So that's all the main frequently asked questions for now. If you do have any other questions, which likely will come up, just shoot Ayumi at convertica.org an email, and like the rest of your campaign, she'll get back to you as soon as possible and we'll answer your questions in the best way she can. But until next time, guys, I'll chat to you soon. Cheers.